Hi everyone, welcome to Sleep Story Planet. Tonight, I'll be sharing a beautiful tale from Journey to the West. I hope you'll join me for a peaceful and wonderful evening together. Chapter 2, Wreaking Havoc at the Peach Banquet. Wukong soared through the air with a single somersault, flying far beyond the highest clouds. In the distance, he saw palaces rising one after another, gleaming with a golden brilliance under the sunlight. From time to time, immortal cranes and celestial maidens flew through the air. Wukong passed over a gently curving bridge made of white jade and arrived before a great gate. At the entrance stood two jade unicorns, and from their mouths flowed streams of clear spring water. Above the gate were three large characters, Southern Heavenly Gate. Just then, a troop of celestial soldiers and generals holding long spears blocked Wukong's path, shouting, "Halt! Who goes there?" Wukong landed his cloud and said with a wide grin, "It was your Jade Emperor who invited me here." "Why won't you let me in?" the general said. "Where did this demon monkey come from, spouting such nonsense?" As he spoke, he raised his spear and aimed it at Wukong. Wukong simply plucked the golden, hooped staff from his ear, gave it a shake in the air, and was ready to fight. Just in time, the great white star arrived, panting for breath and saying, "Wait. Do not fight." Wukong held his staff still and demanded, "Old man, why did you trick me? You said the Jade Emperor invited me to heaven, so why won't they let me pass?" The great white star smiled apologetically and said, "You are new here, so they do not recognize you." Then he turned to the generals and said, "This is an immortal from the lower world, invited by the Jade Emperor. Quickly stand aside." Only then did the heavenly generals step away. The great white star said, "Honored immortal, this way please," and led Wukong through the southern heavenly gate. The great white star brought Wukong before a grand and majestic hall. Wukong looked up and saw a plaque with 4 characters that read, "Palace of Miraculous Mist." The great white star said, "Honored immortal, please wait here for a moment while I go inside to announce you." After speaking, he rose on a gentle cloud and entered the hall. But Wukong was not one to sit still. He stealthily crept in right behind the great white star and entered the palace as well. The great white star went before the throne and announced, "Your Majesty, I have brought Wukong." The Jade Emperor said, "Summon him to the hall." The herald called out, "By order of the Jade Emperor, summon Wukong to the hall." He called for a long time, but there was no answer. In truth, Wukong was already in the hall. It was just that he was so small none of the celestial beings had noticed him. Wukong saw rows of tall heavenly gods, both civil and military officials, standing with their hands by their sides, their gazes fixed forward. He was naturally mischievous, so he tugged on one official's sleeve, then pulled at another's belt. He tapped on one god's armor and playfully shook another's treasured sword. The gods paid him no mind. Finally, Wukong climbed onto the back of a heavenly general and tickled his armpit. The general struggled to hold back his laughter. Wukong then climbed up to his face and tugged on his beard. The general could not bear it any longer. He grabbed Wukong and threw him to the floor, shouting, "The demon monkey is here." Wukong lay on the floor laughing and rolling around. The pagoda, bearing Heavenly King, shouted, "How dare you? You are in the presence of the Jade Emperor. Kneel at once." Hearing this, Wukong deliberately stood up, folded his arms across his chest, and stood perfectly still. The pagoda, bearing Heavenly King, was so angry his beard trembled. The great white star quickly stepped in to smooth things over, saying, "Your Majesty, Wukong is an immortal from the lower world and does not understand the rules of heaven." The Jade Emperor lifted an eyelid and said, "We will waive the formalities. Martial Star Lord, check if there are any vacant official posts for him." The Martial Star Lord took out a register. The great white star leaned in and whispered, "Give him the smallest one." The Martial Star Lord then announced, "Your Majesty, the Imperial stables are in need of a head manager." The Jade Emperor waved his hand and said, "Then grant him the title of Bima Wen, in charge of the Imperial stables. He may now leave the hall." But Wukong stood there without moving. The great white star came over and said, "The Jade Emperor has made you the Bima Wen. Why don't you thank him for this decree?" Wukong asked, "How high a rank is a Bima Wen?" The great white star gave him a thumbs up and said, "A Bima Wen, you ask? Why, it's the highest position here. Once you become the Bima Wen, the thousands of fine horses in the Imperial stables will all be under your care. Go on, thank His Majesty." When Wukong heard this, he was finally pleased and gave the Jade Emperor a happy bow before leaving the hall. The great white star went with Wukong and ordered someone to bring a scarlet official robe and a black gauze hat, helping Wukong put them on. Being playful, Wukong immediately bent the two hat wings and stuck them on the great white star's head. The great white star waved his hands in a fluster, saying, "Great Immortal, please do not joke." After a moment of fun, Wukong said his goodbyes and went on his way. Wukong arrived at the Imperial stables. An official under him brought a register of the fine horses and reported, "We request the Bima Wen to inspect the Imperial horses." Wukong tossed the register aside and went straight to the stables. He saw that all the 1,000 fine steeds were tied up and could not move freely. Some were whimpering softly. Seeing this, Wukong grew furious and said, "Who manages horses this way?" He went forward and broke all the tethers. The celestial horses neighed and jumped with joy, galloping about freely. Wukong leaped onto one of them and rode for a while, feeling as fast as the wind and lightning, a truly wonderful feeling. Wukong loved the horses, so he conjured a rain cloud and let a great shower fall. The celestial horses happily rolled around in the cloud, made bathtubs, enjoying a thorough bath. When Wukong saw the horses were clean and comfortable, he dismissed his magic and gently stroked their manes. Suddenly, a subordinate came to report, "The horse Heavenly Lord is here for an inspection." Wukong said, "What horse lord or bull lord? Pay him no mind." The horse Heavenly Lord waited outside for a long time but saw no one. He said angrily, "Where is the new Bima Wen? Why has he not come to greet me?" With that, he strode inside. When Wukong saw someone enter, he pointed a finger and asked, "Who are you, and how dare you trespass in the Imperial stables?" The horse Heavenly Lord laughed loudly and said, "You foolish monkey. The Jade Emperor sent me to manage you, and you still won't obediently submit to my authority." "Ha ha ha," Wukong said. "The Jade Emperor appointed me Bima Wen, so why would he send someone else to manage me?" He grabbed a nearby attendant and asked, "Is the Ma Wen the highest official here?" The attendant answered hesitantly, "It is the very lowest. So low it doesn't even have a rank. It is just a title for the head stable keeper." Wukong flew into a rage. He tore off his official hat, threw it on the ground, and cursed, "That old white star. He dared to trick me into coming to heaven just to tend horses for the Jade Emperor." The horse heavenly lord laughed loudly and said, "Tending horses is already a promotion for you. If it were up to me, I would have just captured a demon monkey like you." Hearing this, Wukong was so enraged he tore off his official robe and threw it in the man's face. The horse heavenly lord was tangled in the robe and received a flurry of punches and kicks. He was so frightened that he scrambled away. Still not satisfied, Wukong pulled out his golden, hooped staff and smashed the imperial stables to pieces. Only then did he summon his somersault cloud and fly back towards Fruit Mountain. The soldiers and generals guarding the southern heavenly gate tried to stop him, but Wukong sent them scattering with a few swings of his staff. That day, the Jade Emperor was holding his morning court when a celestial soldier rushed in frantically to report. "Reporting to your majesty, something terrible has happened. The new Ma Wen has injured the horse heavenly lord, destroyed the imperial stables, and broken out of the southern heavenly gate to return to Fruit Mountain." The Jade Emperor frowned and said, "How dare this demon monkey be so bold?" Beside him, the gods 1,000-mile eye and favorable, Wind Air knelt and said, "Your Majesty." After Wukong returned, he raised a large banner on Fruit Mountain, calling himself the Great Sage, equal to heaven. The Jade Emperor was furious. Insolent demon monkey, daring to call himself the Great Sage, equal to heaven, heavenly kingly. I command you to lead the celestial troops and generals to capture him without delay. The pagoda, bearing heavenly king, Li Jing clasped his hands and said, "Your humble general obeys." He then took his third son Nessa and the divine general, the giant spirit god, and led the celestial army down to the mortal world. Arriving above Fruit Mountain, Li Jing called out, "Giant spirit god, I order you to go first and challenge him." The giant spirit god replied, "As you command," and descended upon the mountain to fight. Wukong was enjoying some wine when a monkey soldier came to report. Reporting, "Great king, a monster has descended from the heavens." Wukong put on his full armor, held his golden, hooped staff, and said, "My children, for now, hide inside the cave. Watch as I go out to meet this enemy." The giant spirit god descended from his cloud and landed on Fruit Mountain. He was over 10 jang tall, and the trees beside him looked like blades of grass. He held 2 enormous decorative axes and bellowed, "Where is that runaway Ma Wen?" Wukong jabbed his golden, hooped staff into the ground and shouted, "I am right here." The giant spirit god looked around for a long time but saw no one. He glanced down and burst out laughing. "You reckless monkey! With your small stature, you dare to call yourself the Great Sage, equal to heaven. I advise you to surrender quietly, to save me the trouble of acting." Wukong pointed his staff and said, "Halt! What kind of lowly spirit are you, to speak so boldly here?" The giant spirit god said, "I am the giant spirit god, a general under the Jade Emperor. You had best return with me and confess your crimes." Wukong said loudly, Go back and tell that old jade emperor of yours that if he agrees to my title, we can let this be. If not, I will surely fight my way into his palace of miraculous mist." The giant spirit god grew angry and swung his huge axes down at Wukong. But Wukong was small and nimble, and the giant spirit god couldn't seem to land a single blow. The giant spirit god then put away his axes and tried to stomp on Wukong. Wukong simply leaped through the space between his legs. The giant spirit god found it difficult to turn and could do nothing to Wukong, which made him roar with frustration. Suddenly, the giant spirit god spun around and pressed his hands to the ground, trapping Wukong under his palm. He grinned as he closed his hands, but when he slowly opened them again, they were empty. It turned out Wukong had already burrowed into the earth to escape. The giant spirit god was furious. He lifted his rear and sat down hard on the ground, trying to crush Wukong with his large bottom. Wukong said, "I am done playing with you." He then took out his golden, hooped staff and gave the giant spirit god a few sharp taps on his backside and back. The giant spirit god could not bear the pain. Holding his lower back with one hand and his two great axes with the other, he grimaced and fled back to the heavens. Nessa, watching from the clouds, gave a great shout, "Demon monkey, do not be so arrogant. Nessa, the third prince, is here." As he spoke, he held a fire-tipped spear and rode on two wind and fire wheels, charging down to attack. Wukong blocked Nezha's fire-tipped spear with his golden, hooped staff and laughed. "Where did this young child come from? You are still so young and inexperienced. I advise you to go back quickly, lest I accidentally hurt you." Nezha shouted, "Insolence! Face my spear." He thrusted his spear forward. Wukong saw that the strike was both precise and fierce, and knew this opponent was much more formidable than the giant spirit god. He did not dare to be careless and met the attack with his golden, hooped staff. The two of them were locked in battle. After 30 rounds, Nezha's form suddenly flickered and his body grew to the height of a multi-story building. When he looked for Wukong, he could not see him. Nezha laughed loudly, but then he felt a tap on the back of his head. He turned to see that Wukong had grown to be as tall as a mountain. Nezha became furious and shouted, "Change." He transformed to have 3 heads and 6 arms, holding 6 different weapons to attack Wukong: a demon slaying sword, a demon cutting saber, a demon binding rope, a demon subduing mace, an embroidered ball, and a fire wheel. Wukong laughed. "This little one does have some tricks." He too shouted, "Change." In an instant, he also had 3 heads and 6 arms, holding 3 golden, hooped staffs, and he battled with Nezha. Seeing that it was difficult to win quickly, Wukong used a cloning technique. He created a false Wukong to fight Nezha, while his real self leaped to the side, crossed his legs, and watched the fight with a grin. Nezha fought with the fake Wukong for several rounds, then suddenly released his wind and fire wheels to burn him. The fake Wukong immediately returned to its original form, which was just a single hair from Wukong's body, and it was burned to ash. The pagoda bearing Heavenly King saw this from the sky and laughed heartily. Nezha was also very pleased, thinking he had won and could now retreat. He called back his wind and fire wheels. Wukong had a clever idea. He shook his body and also transformed into a wind and fire wheel, mixing in with the real ones as they rolled towards Nezha. Netza saw 3 wind and fire wheels rolling toward him and couldn't tell which was fake. He chose 2 to step onto, and immediately a large blister burned on his foot. It turned out that one of the wheels was actually Wukong in disguise. Netza was in so much pain he could not ride his cloud. He limped back to the heavens. The pagoda, bearing Heavenly King, had no choice but to lead his defeated army back to report. Wukong pointed at the sky and laughed loudly. The monkey soldiers also came out of the caves, cheering for their victory. The pagoda, bearing Heavenly King, returned to the heavens and reported to the Jade Emperor. That demon monkey has vast magical powers. I request your majesty to send more celestial troops, and I am willing to lead them again to capture him. The Jade Emperor stroked his beard and said, "So many generals could not capture him, and you want to send more troops?" The great white star stepped forward from the ranks, knelt, and said, "Your Majesty, this whole affair is the fault of the horse Heavenly Lord for being too rash. In my humble opinion, it would be better to grant the monkey the empty title of Great Sage, equal to heaven. We can keep him in heaven under strict supervision. If any trouble arises, it will be easier to capture him on sight." The pagoda, bearing Heavenly King, said, "Appeasement, appeasement. It is always your old trick. You have shamed the heavenly court." The great white star smiled and said, "It is better than losing more soldiers and generals." The Jade Emperor said, "Enough. The 2 of you need not argue. We will do as the great white star suggests." The great white star bowed and said, "Your humble servant accepts the decree." And so, the great white star took the edict personally written by the Jade Emperor, left the southern heavenly gate, and rode a gentle cloud back towards Fruit Mountain. When the great white star descended from his cloud, monkey soldiers in ambush caught him and were about to beat him. The great white star quickly waved his hands and said, "Wait, do not strike. I have something to say to your king." The monkey soldiers grumbled, "What new trick are you playing? Wasn't it bad enough how you harmed our king last time?" Wukong heard the commotion and called out, "Bring him here." The monkey soldiers pushed and shoved the great white star before Wukong. Wukong smiled and said, "Old man, what scheme are you trying to pull now?" The great white star quickly explained, "It is not a scheme. Last time, the horse Heavenly Lord offended you, and the Jade Emperor has already punished him." Wukong said, "Good. It should have been done sooner. What brings you here this time?" The great white star held up the edict and said with a beaming smile, "The Jade Emperor has issued a decree appointing you as the great sage, equal to heaven." Wukong said, "I am already the great sage, equal to heaven. Who needs his appointment? You have traveled a long way, so you must be tired. Have some fruit to quench your thirst." As he spoke, he reached out and handed the great white star a peach. The great white star took it, bit into it, and smiled. "The peaches on your Fruit Mountain, are quite sweet and fragrant." A small monkey beside him said, "Of course, the peaches on our Fruit Mountain are the best." "The best? I am not so sure about that," said the great white star. "You have never tasted the peaches of heaven, have you? Each one is the size of a coconut, fragrant and crisp, sweet and juicy. When you take a bite, the flavor is simply beyond description." Wukong, who loved peaches more than anything, immediately swallowed and asked, "Where can I find these peaches you speak of?" The great white star shook his head and said, "They cannot be found in this world. They only exist in heaven. Great sage, why don't you go up and see? The Jade Emperor is about to put you in charge of that very peach garden." When Wukong heard this, his spirits lifted, and he asked, "Is this true?" The great white star said, "How could it be false? I have brought the edict with me." Wukong took the edict and saw that it did indeed have the 4 characters for Great Sage, equal to heaven. He had no patience to read it carefully, and immediately said, "Fine, I will trust you one more time. Let's go." The little monkeys anxiously shouted, "Great King, we want to go too. We want to go too." All right, Wukong comforted them. "I will go up first to take a look. If it is as good as he says, I will come back to bring you all with me." Good, good. The little monkeys cheered again. Wukong rode his somersault cloud and followed the great white star back to heaven, where he met the Jade Emperor. The Jade Emperor said, "Wukong, I now grant you the title of Great Sage, equal to heaven, in charge of the peach garden. You may leave the hall." The great white star reminded him from the side, "This time it is a truly high office. Hurry and give your thanks." Only then did Wukong happily bow to the Jade Emperor. The great white star led Wukong to the entrance of the peach garden and said to him, "This garden is where the Queen Mother of the West gets her peaches for the great peach banquet. From now on, it is under your care." Wukong nodded with satisfaction. The great white star called out, "Spirit of the earth." A wisp of green smoke rose from the ground, and a small, white, bearded old man appeared. He bowed to the great white star and said, "I was not aware of your arrival, great star. Please forgive your humble servant for not welcoming you." The great white star said, "This is the great sage, equal to heaven. The Jade Emperor has ordered him to guard the peach garden. You will show the great sage around." The local earth spirit said, "Yes. Great sage, please follow me." Wukong bid farewell to the great white star and followed the earth spirit into the garden. Wukong looked out and saw an endless expanse of pink peach blossoms stretching as far as the eye could see. Wukong scratched his head and said, "Goodness, it is so big." The earth spirit smiled and said, "Great sage, there are 3 sections of peach trees here, a total of 3,600 trees. This first section has 1,200 trees. They blossom every 3,000 years and bear fruit every 3,000 years after that. If a person eats one, they will become healthy and light, able to ride the clouds to heaven." The earth spirit led Wukong onward, saying, "Great sage, this section has 1,200 trees. They blossom every 6,000 years and bear fruit every 6,000 years after that. If a person eats one, they can live forever and become a true immortal." They walked further, and the peach trees in the next section bore even more abundant fruit than the previous 2. The earth spirit said again, "Great sage, this section before you has 1,200 trees." Wukong covered his mouth and said, I know. They blossom every 9,000 years and bear fruit every 9,000 years after that." The earth spirit nodded. Wukong removed his hand and said, "You are so long-winded. Go on about your business. I will look around by myself." With that, he leaped into the peach grove and disappeared. Great sage, the earth spirit called out. "I haven't finished yet. 9,000 years to blossom, 9,000 years to fruit. If a person eats one, they can live as long as the heavens and earth, and shine as long as the sun and moon." After finally finishing his speech, not knowing if Wukong had heard, he disappeared back into the earth. Wukong dove into the peach grove. Seeing the trees laden with enormous immortal peaches, his mouth watered with desire. He leaped onto a peach tree, sat on a branch, and plucked an immortal peach. He took a bite, and it was indeed fragrant and sweet. Wukong was overjoyed. Holding the coconut-sized peach in both hands, he finished it in no time. Wukong tossed the pit to the ground and plucked another one to eat. One after another, soon there was a pile of more than a dozen pits on the ground. When he was full, Wukong let out a loud burp, made himself smaller, and plucked a peach leaf to use as a blanket. He fell asleep right there on the tree and was soon snoring loudly. Just then, the sound of light, cheerful laughter was heard outside the garden gate. It was the Queen Mother, who knew the peaches were ripe and had sent 7 celestial maidens to pick them. When the local earth spirit saw them about to enter, he quickly stopped them, saying, "Please wait, fair maidens. This year is different from the past. The Jade Emperor has sent a great sage, equal to heaven, to guard the peach garden. I must go and inform him first." The maiden in red said, "What great sage? I have never heard of him. We are here on the Queen Mother's orders to pick peaches. Who would dare stop us? Sisters, let's ignore him and go." With that, she slipped inside. The other 6 maidens followed her, and though the earth spirit tried to block them, he could not stop a single one. The 7 maidens went straight to the grove of 9,000-year peaches. Upon entering, the maiden in orange said, "It seems like there are far fewer peaches here." The maiden in green said, "Don't worry about that. Let's just pick the peaches quickly." The 7 maidens then began to pick the fruit. Suddenly, the maiden in yellow cried out, "Sisters, come quickly. There is a giant peach here." By chance, she had lifted the leaf that Wukong was using as a blanket. Wukong was startled awake. He jumped down from the tree and pointed a finger. "Halt. Who are you? How dare you come here to steal peaches?" The 7 maidens were frightened. The maiden in green said, "We are here on the orders of the Queen Mother to pick peaches." Wukong smiled. "Oh, I see. Let me ask you, why does the Queen Mother want you to pick peaches?" The maiden in blue said, "The Queen Mother is hosting the peach banquet and will serve the immortal peaches to all the gods." "Eh?" Wukong said with a smile, "And which gods are invited?" "Tell me." The maiden in blue said, "Many are invited. There is the Grand Supreme Elderly Lord, Guanyin Bodhisattva of the South Sea, the 500 Arhats." The maiden in purple continued, "And also the immortals of the upper 8 caves, the middle 8 caves, and the lower 8 caves. All the gods in heaven are invited, even the Dragon King of the Eastern Sea from the lower world." The more Wukong listened, the angrier he became. He asked urgently, "Why is my name, the great sage, equal to heaven, not on the list?" The maiden in red heard this and let out a giggle, saying, "What great sage? I have never heard of you." A furry faced monkey wanting to attend the peach banquet. What a fanciful dream! Wukong was furious and pulled his golden, hooped staff from his ear, ready to strike. Seeing this, the maiden in red quickly said, "Sisters, let's go." They were about to fly away, but Wukong quickly cast a freezing spell, fixing all the maidens in place, unable to move at all. Wukong rode his somersault cloud and headed straight for the jade pool. He suddenly saw the barefoot immortal riding a cloud towards him. Wukong descended and asked, "Barefoot immortal, where are you going in such a hurry?" The barefoot immortal said, "The Queen Mother is holding her peach banquet. Didn't you know?" Wukong's eyes darted, and he told a lie. "How could I not know? The Queen Mother knows my somersault cloud is fast, so she specially ordered me to inform all the immortals to first go to the Palace of Miraculous Mist for a rehearsal of the ceremony." The barefoot immortal believed him and cupped his hands, saying, "Thank you, thank you." He then turned and flew towards the Palace of Miraculous Mist. After sending the barefoot immortal away, Wukong rode his cloud alone to the jade pool. In the garden was a lotus pond filled with all sorts of rare and exotic flowers. No guests had arrived yet. On the small bridges and in the sky, countless male and female servants were busy carrying wine and fruit, setting up for the feast. Wukong hid in a cloud and looked down. The tables were laden with delicacies from mountains and seas, and strange and precious fruits, many of which he had never even seen before. Suddenly Wukong smelled the aroma of wine. Following the scent, he saw two strong servants straining to carry a large wine vat. Wukong plucked a tuft of hair, blew on it, and the hairs turned into countless sleepy bugs that flew into the servants' nostrils. One by one, the servants stretched, yawned, and then tumbled to the ground, fast asleep. Wukong clapped his hands and laughed. "Queen Mother, you host a banquet, but do not invite me. Well, I will just have my fill first." With that, he descended from his cloud, sat himself grandly on the Jade Emperor's throne, and began to eat and drink. He poured himself a cup and said, "Jade Emperor, pour the wine. Queen Mother, serve the tea." Wukong had never had immortal wine before. He opened a lid and sniffed, and the fragrance filled his nose. He was tempted. He tilted the vat and poured a large mouthful, and the strong taste almost made him spit it out. But the more he drank, the more he liked it, and before he knew it, he was drunk. Wukong thought, "With all these wonderful things, it is a shame my children cannot have any. I might as well take the rest back with me and not leave a single bit for them." Thinking this, he plucked another hair, blew a puff of immortal air on it, and turned it into a large sack. He swept all the wine and fruit into it. Then Wukong tied the sack closed, slung it over his shoulder, and staggered away from the jade pool on his somersault cloud. Carrying the sack, Wukong swayed and stumbled until he came to a place. He opened his eyes and saw a Taoist temple with a plaque that read, "Tushita Palace." Wukong thought, "I was clearly trying to go back to Flower, Fruit Mountain. How did I end up at the home of the Grand Supreme Elderly Lord? Since I am here, I might as well go in and have some fun." He went to the door and knocked for a long time, but no one answered. It turned out that the Grand Supreme Elderly Lord had received the message from the barefoot immortal and had already gone to the Palace of Miraculous Mist. Seeing the door was locked, Wukong changed himself into a tiny insect and crawled through the crack in the door. He looked around, wandering here and there, and unknowingly arrived at the Grand Supreme Elderly Lord's alchemy room. Wukong scanned the room and saw several gourds on a wooden shelf. He casually picked one up and shook it, hearing something rattle inside. Wukong pulled the stopper from the gourd's mouth and tipped it into his palm. 2 golden pills fell out. Not knowing what they were, Wukong put them in his mouth and chewed. They were crisp and fragrant, so he poured out some more and ate them by the handful. After eating about half a gourd's worth, Wukong let out a burp, patted his belly contentedly, slung the sack back over his shoulder, and rode his somersault cloud back to Flower, Fruit Mountain. When the little monkeys saw their king had returned, they jumped and shouted with joy. Wukong landed his cloud and said happily, "My children, I have returned. I brought you immortal wine and an immortal fruit from heaven. Everyone, come and have a taste. After eating, you will all live forever." With that, he opened the sack, and countless immortal wines and fruits flew out. The little monkeys ate and drank, and every one of them was overjoyed. Meanwhile, the Queen Mother and the other immortals arrived at the jade pool for the banquet. They were all stunned by the scene before them. The servants and attendants were lying on the ground, fast asleep. The tables were a mess of overturned cups and plates, with leftover fruit pits and spilled immortal wine everywhere. The 7 celestial maidens, who had been frozen by Wukong's spell, were finally released after half an hour when the magic wore off. They ran to the Queen Mother with their empty baskets and tearfully told her what had happened. The Queen Mother was furious and said, "How dare that demon monkey be so bold? This is complete lawlessness." She then rushed to the Jade Emperor to report the outrage. The Jade Emperor frowned when he heard the news. "This is rebellion, absolute rebellion," he said. The Queen Mother said, "Your Majesty, you must not let this monkey off lightly." Just as she was speaking, the Grand Supreme Elderly Lord hurried in, looking distressed. "Your Majesty," he said, "the 9-turn elixir of immortality that I refined for you has been mostly eaten by that monkey." After he finished, he fled back to Flower, Fruit Mountain. Hearing this, the Jade Emperor trembled with anger and shouted, "Pagoda, bearing heavenly king, I command you to lead 100,000 celestial soldiers and generals to capture this demon monkey. If he dares to resist, bring him to justice on the spot." The Pagoda, bearing heavenly king, clasped his hands and said, "Your humble general accepts the decree." He immediately gathered the 4 heavenly kings, the 9 luminaries, and the 28 constellations. He assembled 100,000 heavenly soldiers and marched grimly towards Flower, Fruit Mountain. Wukong was enjoying wine and fun with the little monkeys when he suddenly saw a dark cloud pressing down towards them. The little monkeys were terrified and scattered, hiding in their mountain cave. The Pagoda, bearing heavenly king, and his celestial army were hidden within that dark cloud. He took out a command flag and gave his orders. "You will set an ambush in front of the mountain, and you will set an ambush behind the mountain." In a short time, troops of heavenly soldiers had surrounded Flower, Fruit Mountain so completely that nothing could get in or out. Wukong saw that this dark cloud was unusual, as if a black lid had been placed over Flower, Fruit Mountain. He quickly waved his own command flag, Seeing the signal, monkey soldiers of all sizes grabbed their swords and spears and came forward, ready for battle. The pagoda-bearing heavenly king waved his flag and said, "Where are the 4 heavenly kings?" The 4 heavenly kings clasped their hands and said, "We are here." The heavenly king said, "I order you to lead the first charge. There must be no mistakes." The 4 heavenly kings replied, "As you command." With that, they charged towards Flower Fruit Mountain. These 4 heavenly kings were 4 brothers named Mo Liking, Mo Li Hong, Mo Li Hai, and Mo Lisho. Each of them was several zhang tall, with green faces and long fangs. Each held a magical treasure. Mo Liking held a precious sword. Mo Li Hong held a pipa lute. Mo Li Hai held an umbrella, and Mo Lisho had a large serpent coiled around his neck. "Wah!" The 4 heavenly kings shouted in unison as they descended. The little monkeys saw them and shrank back into their caves in fear. The 4 heavenly kings stood in mid-air, and Mo Liking raised his sword, saying, "Insolent demon monkey, come out and meet your end." Wukong was furious. He came out to fight, brandishing his golden, hooped staff, and shouted, "You lowly little spirits! What power do you have to speak such arrogant words?" With that, he raised his staff to attack Mo Liking. Mo Liking met him with his precious sword. The 2 fought for more than a dozen rounds. Mo Liking's arm gradually grew numb from the force of the blows, and he began to panic. He quickly threw his sword to the ground. The sword immediately released 10,000 golden rays, transforming into thousands of swords that flew through the air to stab Wukong. Wukong just chuckled, threw his golden, hooped staff into the air, and chanted a spell. The staff also multiplied into thousands of copies, which met the swords in the sky, clashing one for one. When Mo Liking recalled his sword, he saw it was covered in countless nicks. He was so frightened that he quickly fled back to the heavens. Seeing this, Mo Li Hong and Mo Li Hai stepped forward, one holding his pipa and the other his magic umbrella to block Wukong. Mo Li Hong began to play his pipa, and a magical melody drifted from the sky, entering the ears of the little monkeys. The monkey soldiers immediately began to sway and stumble. Wukong too felt his head spin, and he sat down heavily on the ground. Mo Li Hai quickly opened his magic umbrella, and a dark wind blew out from it, pulling Wukong and the little monkeys inside. Mo Li Hong and Mo Li Hai exchanged a look, laughed heartily, and returned to the heavenly court in triumph. Inside the umbrella, Wukong rubbed his eyes and yawned himself awake. He saw that it was pitch black all around him, and the little monkeys were sleeping soundly beside him. Wukong shook the frame of the umbrella. It was very sturdy, as if they were trapped in a prison cell. He tried poking at the umbrella's fabric with his golden, hooped staff, but he could not break through. Wukong had an idea. He plucked a fine hair from his neck, rolled it in his hand, and turned it into a small file. Wukong gently poked the sharp file against the fabric of the umbrella and made a small hole. He reached out and tore the hole open, letting warm sunlight shine into the dark space. The little monkeys rubbed their eyes. Wukong gently pushed and nudged them all awake, then blew a puff of immortal air, sending them all safely back to Flower Fruit Mountain. As Mo Li Hai was riding his cloud, he suddenly felt his magic umbrella become much lighter. He turned it over and saw a large hole in it. Wukong and all the monkeys he had captured were gone. In the moment he was stunned. Wukong suddenly leaped up, snatched the pipa from Mo Lihong's arms, and began to strum it wildly. Mo Lihong and Mo Lihai waved their hands and tried to get it back, but they were quickly entranced by the magical music and fell to the ground, unable to get up. Mo Liking, who was watching from the side, saw this and quickly released his great serpent to bite Wukong. The giant serpent was 7 or 8 zhang long. It opened its huge, bloody mouth, flicking its bright red tongue and hissing loudly. Wukong quickly drew his golden, hooped staff, made it as thick as a bowl, and began to fight the giant serpent. Wukong leaped up and down, not only dodging the serpent's massive jaws, but also avoiding being coiled by its thick body. He was incredibly busy. Suddenly, Wukong noticed a luminous pearl on the serpent's head, shining brightly. He glanced over and saw Mo Liking beside them, waving his arms and making gestures. Wukong immediately understood that Mo Liking was controlling the giant serpent with that pearl. As the serpent lunged to bite, Wukong dodged to the side, leaped onto its back, and climbed up to its head. The serpent struggled desperately to throw him off. Wukong gripped the luminous pearl tightly, and with a great effort, he pulled it off. Without the luminous pearl, the giant serpent immediately went limp and collapsed to the ground like a dead snake. Seeing this, Mo Liking wrung his hands and stamped his feet, anxious but helpless. Wukong grinned, picked up the dead serpent with his golden, hooped staff, and with a mighty swing, threw it at Mo Liking. Mo Liking hastily caught the dead serpent and fled in disgrace with the other 3 kings. When the pagoda, bearing heavenly kings, saw that the 4 heavenly kings had also been defeated, he hurriedly sent a messenger back to the heavenly court to ask the Jade Emperor for urgent help. When the Jade Emperor heard the news, he stroked his beard and frowned. 100,000 heavenly soldiers cannot even capture a single demon monkey. What is to be done? Guanyin Bodhisattva, who had come for the peach banquet, spoke up. I can recommend someone whose abilities are no less than that demon monkey's. The Jade Emperor said, Please speak. Bodhisattva. Guanyin smiled and said, This person lives at the Guanjing estuary. The Jade Emperor asked, Are you speaking of my nephew? The true Lord Erlang. Guanyin nodded and smiled, the very same. He also has his sworn brothers, the 6 brothers of Mount Mai, to help him. The Jade Emperor immediately issued a decree and sent a messenger with the edict and gifts to the Guanjing estuary to summon Erlang Shen. Before long, a dark cloud drifted over from the distance. From within it emerged the 6 brothers of Mount Mai, holding battle axes, spiked clubs, and hooked guards. Next, a celestial hound leaped out, barking and snapping wildly. Finally, 3 eyes appeared in the sky, shining with a cold light like a flash of lightning in a dark fog. The one who had arrived was Erlang Shen, fully armored, holding a 3-pointed double-edged blade, looking majestic and powerful. Wukong saw him but remained calm. He pointed with his golden, hooped staff and said, State your name, you who have come to challenge me. I am the true Lord Erlang, sent by the Jade Emperor to capture you. Surrender quietly now. Wukong heard this and laughed. I have heard that the Jade Emperor had a sister who longed for the mortal world, married a human, and had a son. That must be you, I suppose. Erlang Shen shouted, Silence, face my blade. He raised his 3-pointed, double-edged blade and thrust it forward. Wukong also raised his golden, hooped staff to meet him, and the two began to fight. They battled for 300 rounds, but neither could gain an advantage. Erlang Shen was secretly amazed. This demon monkey truly has great skill. Even I, Erlang Shen, can only fight him to a draw. No wonder 100,000 heavenly soldiers could not defeat him. When the 6 brothers of Mount Mei saw that Erlang Shen could not defeat Wukong, they all closed in, raising their weapons to help. Wukong caught sight of them and used a cloning spell, creating 6 other Wukongs, each holding a golden, hooped staff, to perfectly counter the 6 brothers of Mount Mei. At this moment, the pagoda, bearing Heavenly King, waved his command flag, ordering the heavenly soldiers to capture the monkeys on Fruit Mountain. The monkey soldiers could not hold them back and fled into their caves. Wukong was tied up in his battle with Erlang Shen and could not rescue them. He could only watch as his children were scattered and defeated, and his heart grew very anxious. Wukong had no heart to continue the fight. He made a feint with his staff, then turned and fled. Erlang Shen shouted, "Reckless monkey, where do you think you are going?" and gave chase right behind him. Just as Wukong landed on Fruit Mountain, countless blades and spears shot up from the ground to stab him. Wukong soared into the sky again, but a cloud appeared above him, hiding many heavenly soldiers with their blades pointed down at him. Wukong flew his cloud towards the front of the mountain, but a troop of soldiers appeared there. He then turned to the back of the mountain, but several heavenly generals ambushed him from the forest. Wukong thought to himself that this was truly what it meant to have no path to the sky and no door into the earth. That old Jade Emperor, you are truly wicked. Suddenly Wukong had a brilliant idea. He transformed into a small sparrow, flapped his wings, and landed casually on a tree branch. Erlang Shen chased after him, but suddenly lost sight of Wukong. He searched high and low, but could find no trace of him. Erlang Shen touched his forehead and opened the 3rd eye between his brows. A golden light shone from it, illuminating all the plants on the ground. Erlang Shen saw a small sparrow on a branch that looked suspicious. It kept shielding its eyes with a hand to look up at the sky. He thought, what kind of sparrow has hands? It must be that monkey in disguise. I will not startle him, but strike him by surprise. With this thought, Erlang Shen changed himself into a hawk and swooped down from the sky towards the branch. But the little sparrow was prepared. It darted away, and the hawk's attack missed completely. The little sparrow and the hawk then began to fight in the sky. Although the hawk was fierce, it was not as nimble as the sparrow, which managed to peck out a few of its feathers. The little sparrow flew to the edge of a small river, suddenly dove into the water, and transformed into a small golden fish, disappearing into a school of fish. Erlang Shen returned to his true form and shone his 3rd eye into the water. He saw a small golden fish with a monkey's face. Erlang Shen thought, this must be the monkey again. We will see how I deal with him. With that thought, Erlang Shen shook his body and transformed into a cormorant. He strode forward on his 2 long legs, stretched his long neck, and plunged his sharp beak into the water to peck at the little golden fish. The little golden fish, pursued by the cormorant with no escape, quickly leaped onto the bank and transformed into a small squirrel, perching on a tree branch. The cormorant also came ashore and changed into a venomous snake to bite the squirrel. The squirrel then turned into an immortal crane, using its sharp beak to peck at the snake. After being pecked twice, the snake changed into a fierce dog to bite the crane. The crane immediately transformed into a leopard to attack the dog. Erlang Shen then changed from a dog into a fierce tiger and pinned the leopard under his claws. Just as the tiger was feeling proud, the leopard suddenly transformed into a majestic lion and knocked the tiger unconscious with a few quick blows. Wukong chuckled and took the opportunity to slip away. Erlang Shen, who had been beaten dizzy, took a long time to get up. When he did, Wukong was long gone, and he roared in frustration. Wukong came to a clearing halfway up the mountain. He had an idea. He burrowed into the ground and transformed into a small local shrine. He used his mouth as the temple door, his teeth as the door panels, and his 2 eyes as the windows. Only his tail was a problem, so he had to turn it into a flagpole. Erlang Shen could not find any trace of Wukong, so he flew back into the sky and opened his 3rd eye. He saw a small temple halfway up the mountain. Erlang Shen looked closely and chuckled coldly. Who would ever put a flagpole behind a temple? It must be that monkey in disguise. Erlang Shen descended from his cloud, pretending not to have seen through the disguise. He slowly walked around to the back of the shrine, then suddenly raised his sharp blade and thrust it towards one of the shrine's windows. Wukong saw that things were not looking good. He quickly blocked the attack with his golden, hooped staff, used an invisibility spell, and disappeared into the air. With Wukong gone, the pagoda, bearing Heavenly King, quickly took out his demon, revealing mirror to find him. As soon as the divine light shone out, the Heavenly King shouted, "Oh no, true Lord, that demon monkey is flying towards your home at the Guanjing estuary." Hearing this, Erlang Shen bowed to the Heavenly King and hurried home. Wukong arrived at the Guanjiang estuary, changed into the form of Erlang Shen, and swaggered into the temple dedicated to him. Everyone came out to greet him. Wukong casually sat down on Erlang Shen's divine throne and began to eat the wine and fruit on the table. Erlang Shen rushed home. His attendants came out to welcome him. Holding his 3-pointed double-edged blade, Erlang Shen asked, "Has a monkey called the Great Sage, equal to heaven, been here?" His attendants looked surprised and said, "We have not seen a great sage, but we did see a true lord who looks exactly like you. He is inside drinking wine." Erlang Shen was furious. He charged into the temple with his blade ready. He saw a fake Erlang Shen sitting on the throne, holding fruit in one hand and a wine pot in the other, eating with great enthusiasm. When the fake Erlang saw the real one enter, he grinned, revealing Wukong's true face, and shouted, "True Lord Erlang, this temple now belongs to the name of Sun." Erlang Shen thrust his blade at Wukong. Wukong pulled out his golden, hooped staff, gave it a twirl, and the two began to fight once more. The Grand Supreme Elderly Lord saw this from heaven and said to the Jade Emperor, "Your Majesty, allow your humble servant to lend Erlang Shen a hand." The Jade Emperor asked curiously, "What weapon will you use?" The Grand Supreme Elderly Lord smiled and said, "No weapon at all, just a small diamond bangle." With that, he mounted his green ox, took a glittering steel ring from his left arm, and threw it with great force into the air. Wukong was completely focused on his battle with Erlang Shen. and was not prepared at all. The steel ring flew straight and true, hitting Wukong on the back of the head. Wukong's vision went black. Erlang Shen's celestial hound seized the opportunity to leap forward and bite Wukong's right leg, dragging him to the ground. Erlang Shen and the others rushed forward and tied Wukong up. Wukong was taken back to the heavenly court, and Erlang Shen hurried to report his victory to the Jade Emperor. The Jade Emperor was overjoyed and ordered the demon monkey to be taken immediately to the demon slaying platform to be dealt with. The Jade Emperor personally oversaw the proceedings. He sat high on the platform and said proudly, "Hemph, you insolent demon monkey. Now you understand. This is the consequence of defying me." Wukong was chained to a pillar with a thick iron chain, but he just grinned and said, "Hehe, old Jade Emperor, you are truly skilled. You even resort to sneak attacks to deal with just me. I would like to see what you can do to me now." The Jade Emperor shouted in a rage, "Guards, execute him at once." But after a while, the executioner came back to report, "Your Majesty, that monkey's head is as hard as steel. When our blades strike it, they just create sparks but cannot harm a single hair on his head. We have already shattered several blades." The Jade Emperor said furiously, "If blades cannot harm him, then shoot him with a volley of arrows." A short while later, an archer came to report, "Your Majesty, we shot arrows at him like rain. We have even damaged the pillar, but the monkey is completely unharmed. In fact, he has fallen asleep." The Jade Emperor gritted his teeth and said, "If arrows cannot kill him, then burn him with fire and strike him with lightning." In an instant, the god of fire unleashed heavenly flames, and the god of thunder sent down lightning bolts. But Wukong stood tall through it all, laughing loudly, "Old Jade Emperor, what other tricks do you have? Bring them all on." The Jade Emperor was at his wit's end. "Alas, this demon monkey is so powerful and difficult to handle. What can be done?" The Grand Supreme Elderly Lord's eyes darted, and he said, "Your Majesty, it must be because the demon monkey ate the immortal peaches and drank the immortal wine, and also stole my 9 turn elixir. That is how he has forged an indestructible body. I have a solution. I ask your Majesty to allow me to take him back and throw him into my 8 trigrams furnace. I will refine him with both gentle and martial fire for 7 times 7, which is 49 days. I am not afraid that he will not be turned to ash." The Jade Emperor stroked his beard and nodded. The Grand Supreme Elderly Lord took the chained Wukong back to his Tushita palace. He ordered his attendants to open the 8 trigrams furnace and threw Wukong headfirst into the red, hot flames. Then he tapped the furnace with his sword and asked, "Monkey head, how does it feel in there?" Unexpectedly, Wukong's voice came from inside. "Hehe, it's nice and cool, very comfortable." The Grand Supreme Elderly Lord sneered, "Do not be so hasty. I will make you feel truly cool and comfortable in a moment." He made a hand sign, chanted a spell, and released the Samadhi fire into the furnace. This Samadhi fire was unlike any mortal flame. Even stone would turn to ash upon contact with it. The Grand Supreme Elderly Lord, fearing Wukong would not perish quickly enough, also ordered his attendants, "Fan the flames with all your might." And so, 49 days passed. The Grand Supreme Elderly Lord tapped the furnace and asked, "Monkey head, are you still comfortable now?" He waited for a long time but heard no reply. The Grand Supreme Elderly Lord laughed loudly and said, "My disciples, the demon monkey has been reduced to ashes. Quickly, put out the fire and open the furnace." The attendants used a fire gourd to extinguish the samadhi fire, activated the mechanism, and opened the furnace. The Grand Supreme Elderly Lord looked inside and saw 2 glowing orbs. He chuckled. "I did not expect to have refined the demon monkey into 2 immortal pills." Smiling, he reached inside to pick them up, but his fingers were suddenly bitten by a row of sharp white teeth. He cried out in pain and fell backwards. From within the furnace leaped Wukong, covered in soot, his 2 eyes shining brightly. It turned out that Wukong had forged his fairy eyes with golden pupils inside the furnace. Wukong kicked over the 8 trigrams furnace, flexed his arms to break the now brittle iron chains, and pulled the golden hooped staff from his ear, giving it a twirl. The Grand Supreme Elderly Lord was so scared he fell to the ground, crying, great sage, Wukong had no time for him. With a single somersault, he flipped out of the palace to find the Jade Emperor and settle the score. He fought his way past the southern heavenly gate with his staff and charged all the way to the palace of miraculous mist. The guards and heavenly soldiers in front of the palace all came to surround and attack him. Wukong showed no fear. With a shake of his body, he transformed to have 3 heads and 6 arms. He swung 3 golden, hooped staffs with such force that they whistled through the air and no one dared to approach. From his throne, the Jade Emperor saw that his celestial army was no match for Wukong. He cried out urgently, "Quickly, go and ask for help from Buddha Tathagata of the Western Heaven." The Buddha had already foreseen the trouble in the heavenly palace. He brought his 2 honored disciples, Ananda and Kasyapa, and arrived before the great hall in the blink of an eye. Wukong found his path blocked and said angrily, "Who are you? Get out of my way. Do not stop me from taking that old Jade Emperor's throne." Buddha Tathagata said slowly and calmly, "What great skill do you possess, that you dare to seize the throne of the Jade Emperor?" Wukong put his left hand on his hip and jabbed his golden, hooped staff on the steps with his right, saying loudly, "As the saying goes, the Emperor's seat changes hands. Next year it will be my turn. Whoever has the ability gets to sit on the Jade Emperor's throne." The Buddha asked, "So you are saying your abilities are not small?" Wukong folded his arms across his chest and said with great confidence, "Of course. I have many skills. The 72 transformations are nothing, and a single somersault can take me 108,000 li. With such skills, why can I not sit on the Jade Emperor's throne?" Hearing this, the Buddha smiled faintly and said, "People say your somersault cloud can travel far, but I do not believe it. Do you dare to make a wager with me? You don't believe it. What's the wager?" Wukong asked. The Buddha smiled and opened his palm, saying to him, "I wager that you cannot somersault out of the palm of my hand." Wukong thought to himself, "This monk is so foolish. My single somersault can travel 108,000 li. His palm is no more than a foot across. How could I not fly out of it?" So Wukong put his hands on his hips and said, "All right, I will take that bet." "What happens if you lose?" The Buddha said, "If I lose, I will persuade the Jade Emperor to give his throne to you." Wukong's eyes widened when he heard this. "Are you serious? Can you really make the Jade Emperor do that?" The Buddha nodded. I can. Fine, Wukong said. He leaped onto the Buddha's palm and shouted, "Watch closely now, I am off." With that, he performed a somersault and flew away. The Buddha simply nodded and smiled. Wukong flew for a long time. He saw nothing but swirling clouds and mist before him, and then 5 enormous, flesh-colored pillars. Wukong landed his cloud, went up to touch them, and found they were still warm. He thought, could it be that I flew too far with one somersault and have already reached the edge of the sky? He was about to turn back, but then thought, no, I must leave some proof, so that monk cannot go back on his word. So Wukong plucked a hair, turned it into a writing brush, wet the tip with his tongue, and scrawled a few large, crooked characters on one of the pillars. The great sage, equal to heaven, was here. After writing, he suddenly felt the need to relieve himself. He tossed the brush aside, undid his trousers, and left a puddle of monkey urine at the base of the pillar. Then he performed another somersault and flew back. When Wukong saw the Buddha, he said proudly, "Fat monk, you must keep your word. I have flown to the edge of the sky and back. I even left a message on one of the pillars supporting the heavens. If you don't believe me, you can come with me to see it." The Buddha smiled and said, "There is no need to look. You little monkey who loves to urinate. You never even left the palm of my hand." Wukong looked back and saw that the characters he had written were right there, on the Buddha's middle finger, with a small puddle of monkey urine below it. He muttered to himself, "How can this be? Does he have the power to know the future? I must go and see for myself." Saying this, he summoned his cloud and tried to fly away. But the Buddha turned his palm upside down. His 5 fingers transformed into 5 great mountain peaks of gold, wood, water, fire, and earth. They were called the 5 Elements Mountain, and they pressed down upon Wukong. Wukong struggled to get up, pushing so hard that a large crack appeared in the mountain. Thousand Mile Eye saw this and hurriedly reported it to the Jade Emperor. The Jade Emperor looked at the Buddha. The Buddha calmly waved his hand and said, "Everyone, do not panic. I have a way." He then personally wrote a magical talisman and had the disciple Ananda paste it on the crack in the mountain. Ananda took the Buddha's talisman and placed it over the crack on the 5 Elements Mountain. Strangely enough, the 2 sides of the great mountain slowly began to close together, and the original crack disappeared without a trace. Wukong was trapped under the 5 Elements Mountain with only his head and one arm exposed, unable to move at all. When he was hungry, the local earth spirit would feed him iron pellets. When he was thirsty, he was given molten copper to drink. For now, we will not speak of Wukong's suffering under the 5 Elements Mountain. Let us first say that the Jade Emperor, seeing the demon monkey was completely subdued, immediately ordered his immortals to prepare a feast of dragon liver, phoenix marrow, immortal wine, and peaches to honor Buddha Tathagata for his success. He held a great banquet for all the officials. The Queen Mother also commanded the moon goddess Chang to lead the celestial maidens in a graceful dance. The heavenly soldiers and generals all drank heartily, raising their cups in celebration.